Mainstream media is in a full-blown panic as the Arizona audit picks back up, and as more and more Americans are seeing the truth. They're calling it dangerous, crazy, bonkers, and stupid. Perhaps their lies are coming back to haunt them, and spooky, they're calling it. But just one of these traitors is going to face justice. All this and more on today's show. Welcome, everyone, to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse, broadcasting live from the heart of America, Ohio. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so happy to see you here, everybody. As I like to start off with, where's everyone from? I've got Mandy coming in from Alaska. Sandy Brown, good to see you again, as usual. Always love seeing you here. Simon from the Netherlands. Gosh, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining. Wow, Jin Kap Mang from Myanmar. Gosh, you've had some fun election things happening there, but at least it looks like, from my understanding, your military is doing what's right there. MAGA 2020, of course, it's very good to see you. Great to have you here. Terry, good morning to you. Michael, Panama City, Florida. Florida, Ron DeSantis, good job. Robert Kane, also Florida. Terry, Arizona, the front line out there with what's happening right now. Joseph in Ireland, welcome, Joseph. Paul from Romania. Gosh, thank you for joining. Ron, Arkansas. Kat, yeah, exactly. I love seeing other countries here. United in spirit against darkness, absolutely. Matt from Wyoming. Zlati from Bulgaria. I guess I love the international crowd that comes to these things. Like I said, like I always say, this is something that affects the whole world. It's not about America. This is about anybody who cherishes their freedom worldwide. This is what's happening. So, and Valerie from Switzerland, thank you. Okay, quick before I jump in the show, the small reminder at the beginning to hit the like button, help share, hit the subscribe button. If you're subscribed, make sure you've got the notification button checked. Unfortunately, as you are all very familiar, YouTube has been censoring me very heavily, even lying about the numbers, even absolutely lying about the numbers that are coming up on the views. Like, so sometimes I'll be looking at how many views I have, and it might say, 12,000. I check it an hour later, it says 11,000 or 10,000. So they're doing everything they can to throttle my channel and make it more and more difficult for everyone to find this information. MAGA 2020, thank you so much for that super chat donation. I really appreciate that. Also, yeah, YouTube demonetizes almost every video of mine. They demonetize. And then I can go in and request. It's interesting. I can go in and I can request a manual review to remonetize it. And almost always they remonetize it, but it's actually after the majority of the views are done. So they might, especially with the live shows, they get a lot of views the first day. Second day, it drops off as you get 3 or 4 days. So by the 5th day, they will monetize the video after I've lost all opportunity. So it's just another way that they're targeting people. If I was in Florida, I could be suing them, thanks to Ron DeSantis and the new law they passed down there. So again, reminder to hit the like button. Thank you for your comments. The amount of comments also helps the video get spread more far on YouTube, because they, as YouTube looks at, they like to gauge the user interaction, et cetera, to see, hey, is this a video people are enjoying? So those are the ways that we can bypass this. We are also on Rumble. I know that last time there's a few people on Rumble that had said that the video wasn't working. Unfortunately, Rumble it's a new feature they have for live videos, and it's a little bit buggy. So there's not a whole lot I can do. So I just recommend that if you're watching on Rumble and the video cuts out for any reason, unfortunately, you might have to hop over to YouTube at this point. Rumble did get a lot of big investment coming in lately, which is fantastic, because I hope to see them really increasing their platform and growing their platform. I'm also on, there's another website called YouMaker. It's youmaker.com. Which is completely uncensored. It's similar to a BitChute, etc. I would say that outside of YouTube, it has the best design and user interface of any of the video platforms that I've used. So I would recommend also checking me out on YouMaker. There's also a lot of great content on there that you can find as well. So let's dive in. Let's take a look at what's happening in Maricopa. This is, Maricopa is the front line. And I'll give you a quick disclaimer. I have to be careful about how I talk about this information. When you use the word election with other certain words, those are the quick ways to get banned and have your videos deleted on YouTube. You can always see what they fear. You can always tell what they fear us talking about because it's the content that they are the quickest to censor. It's I guess that's really in the world we are today. It's the inversion of truth. What you see spreading far and wide and being promoted are usually the lies. What you have being suppressed, what you have being censored, that's the truth. And the people that are on the forefront telling this truth, those are the people that are targeted. But you know what? We're not going to stop because we have a country to save. We've got a lot of Americans that need to find out what's really happening. And we have a lot of Americans and people around the world that have been deceived for a very long time. And that was me. Rewind 4 or 5 years ago, I was just didn't pay attention much and just following what was happening. I thought that the mainstream media, I knew they were dishonest, but didn't put much thought into it. So there's a lot of folks around the world that still need to understand what's happening in this world. And the more people that we can wake up together, the more people we can help understand and see the truth. Maybe you call that a great awakening of some sort. The more power we're going to have, because the powers that be, those that are trying to take control over our elections, our media, etc. People like Mr. Soros, who we're going to be talking about today, they do not want us to have truthful information because the truth sets us free. So let's go ahead and just dive into what's happening in Maricopa. Maricopa is going to be the focal point of what I'm talking about today. It's on the front line of the audits. There's a lot of states that are following, which we'll touch upon, but I've gotten a lot of people asking, right, what's happening in Maricopa? Where are we at? What's the timeline look like? What is Trump's perspective? What's the media saying? So let's first just dive in here. I've got an article from the Epoch Times talking about, this is just an overview of, kind of what's happened since they're starting back up. I'll just read through a few bits of this. So it says, this is basically, so the election audit has resumed. It was on pause because of the Coliseum that they're renting out. So it says, workers in Arizona's largest county on May 24th resumed reviewing ballots and election machines in a 2020 audit. Approximately 500,000 ballots from the nearly 2.1 million cast in Maricopa County in the presidential election have been reviewed by the audit team, which was hired by the state Senate, right? So just in case you're not familiar with that, so it's the Republican-controlled state Senate that is driving the audit in Maricopa. And so it's interesting, and again, this, if you're looking at the Constitution, how it's structured, even just overall governance, there's so much power within even a state Senate, right, to do certain things, right? So I think that when you look at the mainstream media, a lot of times they focus so much on what's happening in Washington, D.C., but the reality is that the real power is in the people, right? The real power is in the smaller groups. It's at the school board level. It's at the state level, the county level. That's where the power is to really take control of the country. And this is what you have as an example of this. You saw that back in around December time last year, they tried to take things to the Supreme Court at the federal level. And, we all know what happened there. So they say, hey, okay, great. Well, we have patriots that are fighting at the state level. And that's what this is. So the audit team took a break as the high school graduations were held in the Veterans Memorial in Phoenix, which that's what they're renting out. It's the Vets Memorial. They moved the ballots and the equipment back over the weekend. And what they're saying is that, so they have control of the building through June 30th. There's a handful of folks that have been asking about the timeline, right? So the only timeline I can really say that I know is that they have the Coliseum rented until June 30th. And as I understand, they hope to finish the audit by then. Now, the question is what happens next? And this is something I'm not as, I don't have a solid answer for that, but I'm assuming that once they finish the audit, they'll go through a process of probably pulling all the information together to present. And then I'm not sure it'll probably get presented perhaps at a federal level, definitely at a state level. You're going to see a lot of the upright media covering what's being presented, what's being exposed, whether they find anything or not, right? That's the approach that they're taking with this, is that they're just saying, look, there's a lot of speculation. We just want to find out. We want to look at it thoroughly. The American people have a right to know, was this done correctly or was it done incorrectly? So what's interesting is that since they've taken their break, they've now really ramped up their team and the amount of people that they can be putting to work on this audit. Right? So that they say, quote, we have a lot more tables and people they train during the 1 week off. And so we think that the throughput is going to pick up significantly. This is Ken Bennett, he's the former Republican Arizona Secretary of State, who's now serving as the audit liaison for the state Senate. He says, we had the Coliseum this last week of May and all of June, so we're confident we can get it done in that time. So they've now really, really sped up. They're working a lot stronger and a lot faster. Let's see. Now, a quick update here. So as you've probably heard, the audit is led by the Florida-based cyber ninjas, who initially said that they would take about 6 weeks from start to finish. It's now taking a little bit longer. Doug Logan, the CEO of Cyber Ninjas, told state senators during a meeting last week that the delayed timeline is due to a number of technical issues as well as lack of workers, which hopefully with that break, they've got new workers coming in. They fixed the technical issues. Let's see. So the primary, those primarily focus on ensuring the version of the software that was supposed to be running on the ballot tabulator machine was in fact in use. That's one thing they're doing, looking at the machines. Is the software correct? So there's a few other things that are happening there, but that's the overall, kind of status. It's getting started back up. They've got more folks that are there working. They're trying to fix the technical issues. They've already found, it says the new audit, quote, is being done at the request and the direction of the Senate so that people have confidence that the election was done correctly. This is Bennett, who told the Epoch Times. It has nothing to do with trying to change the results from November. Auditors have said they found irregularities, included a deleted database and ballot batches that didn't match the documentation given to them by Maricopa County, right? So they call these, I think, the pink slips. These are the physical papers. That's what they're doing, is making sure that the papers actually match what was in the database, right? And so you saw that they had issues with the database being deleted. They were able to recover it. There's been issues getting passwords. They got the passwords of one layer to look into things, and then they found out that they didn't have the password for the next layer, which it looks like Dominion is holding that password, which I'm not going to go in too much into that company. They're very litigious, but let's just say that they certainly have a strong involvement in what's happening with the elections. That's a very kosher way of saying things. Okay. So that's the main update in terms of what's happening. But I'm going to be digging into the opposition and some of the details, right, of that. So what they're saying is that the resistance to the process goes up to the Arizona Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, who told county officials in a recent letter that they shouldn't use the machines that are being audited in the future because of concerns they may be compromised. So something that is important to understand with this is that Katie Hobbs, she is the Arizona Secretary of State. Now, no, the Secretary of States don't have the exact job duties in every state. They're a little bit different, but one of the primary duties of the majority of them is actually overseeing the election process, right? So ruling on the cases, interpreting election law, right? Because within the Constitution, how it's set up is that the elections need to be done at a state level, right? They saw this. The founding fathers foresaw these things, and they did not want the federal government getting involved with the elections. because again, it was a separation of powers. By distributing the power of each state election to each state individually, they are preventing basically a federal government, the federal, which could potentially become a very corrupted, centralized power, from taking control of really the one things that protect the freedom of folks in our country. It's the ability to elect the officials that we deem to be the best. We are able to elect the officials that we believe are going to take care of us, that are going to look out for us, that are not corrupted and bought off. So controlling the election process is obviously a very large goal of people that want to bring down America. So that's what's happening. Now, I want to dive into this is a fantastic interview that this is going to give us a little more detail into what's really going on. So this is an interview that the Gateway Pundit did. This is on May 26th with the Arizona Audit Director, Ken Bennett. So I'm going to scroll down. They're talking about how things have been starting back up. They've got a transcript here of Bennett with one of the reporters from the Gateway Pundit. So the first question, how's the audit going? And Bennett says, we started to get back up yesterday. Everything is running very smoothly. We have the most counting tables filled than we've ever had since we began, and they're increasing every day. More and more volunteers and staff are coming in, so we're pleased. So the reporter asks, in regards to your response to the MCBOS, Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, I believe that's what that stands for, on the 18th, have you gotten an answer from the county regarding issues with duplicate ballots and corresponding originals? He says, no, we haven't heard anything from them yet, but we're putting together a specific email to ask them some of those questions. They didn't want to come to the hearing at the Senate, and they had their own little hearing the day before. Suspicious. We didn't get that many of the answers we would have liked to have gotten, but we're getting ready to contact them whether they're willing to give us the information. He's also asking if they've heard back on the chain of custody documentation from November to April. No, they haven't heard anything, right? So there are some things that are being hidden, right? And he says, in regards to the pink slip discrepancy, they basically said, we don't believe you. Your auditors must have counted wrong. And the reporter's asking, do you think that the auditors might have counted wrong, or do you think they're just deflecting the blame, right? So as I understand what they're referring to is that the pink slip, I believe the pink slip are all the physical copies of the actual ballots to make sure that those are matching what's in the database, right? So, and I'm hearing some reports that some of the discrepancies are up to 17.5% differences, right? Which is significant. I heard that someone, I think it was in an interview I was watching with Bennett, as he was discussing the closeness of this election. He was basically saying, to understand how close the election was in Arizona, imagine that you have 1,000 voters, right? And there's 1,000 voters, and 499 vote for one person, and 501 vote for the other person. I believe that's the number he used. Like it's that close. It's a difference of one vote, basically. Like if you're looking at 1,000, so that's how close things were. So even if you find a 2% or a 1%, error, discrepancies, that becomes very significant, right? It becomes very significant. And so in response, asking, the reporter asks Bennett, do you think that you counted wrong? He said, well, we've been very precise, and I've watched personally to see if those numbers add up all the time. As many times they do not, comparing the two different, the pink slips versus the data. So the data that we sent them in the email saying those batches do not always equal the number of ballots that their little subtitle sheet say there should be is a correct statement. And we hope they'll be able to give us a little more insight other than saying it's supposed to add up and we must have just counted wrong, right? So it's almost, if you imagine that let's say that, you buy a carton of, canned beans, which I buy those for prepping reasons. Say you buy a thing of, 50 canned beans and you count 48 and you count 6 times, 48, 48, 48, 48. You go back to the store and you say, look, you only gave me 48, cans of beans. They say, no, you must have counted wrong, right? That's basically what's happening is they're looking at these numbers. They're trying to match these things up. and they're saying, look, the actual slips, the number of slips is not matching what you're showing in your database. And they just keep coming back and saying, nope, you're wrong. So let's see. Let's just see how this transpires. So he talks about how the fact that they're requesting a lot of information, but the board of supervisors is not being very friendly with it. So obviously they're blocking it. There's a lot of opposition, as we know, from Katie Hobbs, who has really taken a strong stance against this, and she's been really parading around all the different media, not Fox News. She's been going on to, I think, MSNBC and all the favorite media of the left, and talking about all why this is just it's a bunch of conspiracies, that the even now saying that because the auditors have these machines in their possession through the auditing process, that these machines should never be used again for future elections, because she's accusing them of potentially putting on malware. I mean, she's just going nuts with this. But one question that I always ask is, who's behind people, right? Especially when you see something like this. Like, I really believe that there's one version of the truth. Like, I think that the truth is truth. And when you have something that is truthful, right? Whatever happened in Arizona, there is one version of that is true. There's one version. It's like either it was incorrupt and it was corrupted, and as Trump has said, the crime of the century, or it was not, right? So people like Katie Hobbs, they have to know what's true. People like Rachel Maddow, people like Brian Stelter over at Potato Head over at CNN, they have to know what's true. So when you see them getting in front of the camera and just lying blatantly, right? Because there's only one version of that truth. I believe I think I know what's true through enough of my research independently. You have to ask yourself, why are they lying? Is it because they hate Donald Trump? No, I don't think so. I think that a lot of times these people are lying because these people have become the pawns, the puppets for the puppet masters, the globalist puppet masters, the Chinese puppet masters, right? Who's one of the big puppet masters that we think about, who looks like he is 160 years old with his bags beneath his eyes? Yeah, Mr. Soros. So could it be that perhaps Katie Hobbs has any relationship with him? Well, let's take a look, right? So this is an article that came out. This was actually in 2020 so Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs discloses financial support, right? She has to disclose her financial support from foreign governments, George Soros, numerous British Pilgrim Society minions, including the Ford Foundation. So what this article here is basically is they're calling for her resignation because according to the Federal Election Commission website, campaigns may not solicit or accept contributions from foreign nationals. Federal law prohibits it. Okay, so if we look at this little graphic here, it starts a little bit tiny, showing the donors, the Canadian Embassy, the Taiwan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the State Innovation Exchange, right? So let's look into some of these things. Who's behind these things, okay? Well, it just so happens to be that one of the main funders is George Soros. He also, there's the Clinton Foundation has some involvement in this. So basically that the funding, and this is, when she won her seat, when she won the election, I think it was in 2018, she was going up against for the position of Secretary of State. She was going up against a Republican who was running for that, who was winning. He had a much stronger chance, and he was winning. And then there were some very mysterious events that happened with her election. She got put in place. She won, right? And now she is in place. She just so happens to be in charge in the key state. If you watched Fox News, I was jumping between Fox News and Newsmax. on November 3rd, and you saw that, if you're like me, you saw Arizona being called when it was maybe, what, 60% counted? And it was just like, "Whoa, there's something really, really fishy going on." Well, here we have Katie Hobbs and her ties to Mr. Soros and the ties to the Clintons. So, um, anyway, when you ask yourself who's behind these people, as I've talked about before, I think that there's two ways that these people are controlled. It's through blackmail and bribery, right? So here we see that they contributed, a large amount of money to her campaign to win. I think a lot of times it comes with pulling strings. I think that it's also one thing that I try to frame with this is that, unfortunately, in a lot of places in our country, people don't get into a place of power unless they're allowed. And especially the places where people are, where that these are, pardon me, that there are areas that are completely controlled, like Hollywood, mainstream media. You're not going to have someone become an A-list actor or a multi Grammy award winning musician or an Anderson Cooper on CNN. People are not going to get into those places of power if there's not enough leverage to allow them to be there and still maintain control of them. So people like Katie Hobbs, I don't know, right? What goes, if you trace it back? Is it money? Is it bribery? I don't know. I'm just speculating here. I'm not going to call her out specifically, but I know that many folks, though, have been paid large sums of money by the Chinese Communist Party, et cetera. They have been caught in honeypot traps. I've gone into that with China. You travel to China, you wake up in a hotel room not knowing what happened. Everything's recorded. They've now got proof of this saying that you're now going to do what we want. You turned down our $10 million offer to buy you. Well, now we own you. And it was free. And that's just how it works. So unfortunately, I think a lot of the people that you see doing these things, you're like, why is this person lying like that? Well, there's reasons. And I think a lot of times it's against their own will. But again, I think they could always come out and say, look, these things happened. I'm not going to have this hang on my conscience, and they can do what's right for our country. So let's jump into the next article to look at. So this is interesting, and this is a bit of good news here, specifically about Katie Hobbs. I think this is a huge, huge progress. Republicans moved to limit power of Arizona Secretary of State. So the lawmakers in Arizona on May 25th, they moved to limit the power of Katie Hobbs. So they passed measures that would make clear that Attorney General Mark Brnovich has the sole authority to defend Arizona election laws and procedures. Right. So this is very, very significant. So the bill was narrowly passed by the House Appropriations Committee in a partisan 7-6 vote, with all Republicans voting for it. A similar narrow vote ensued later in the day in the Senate Appropriations Committee. Now she's complaining and saying that they're preventing me from doing my job that the Arizona voters elected me to do. Oh, really? Was it the Arizona voters that chose you as the Secretary of State? Is that what that is? Or is it old Grumpy that hates America? So this is excellent, though, because this is fantastic. Because from my understanding of this, what happened here, the Republicans just said, okay, well, we're going to strip you of all your powers, and we're going to give those powers to the upright Republican. I think he used the Attorney General. Yeah, the Attorney General. So this is a fantastic bit of news. This is a very big win out there because, like I said earlier, it's the Secretary of State that is, in a lot of instances, ruling, interpreting the laws. It has a lot of control of the election. So the fact that they've now removed that control from her, put in somebody that hopefully we can trust, I'd like to believe so. That's fantastic. So that's exciting news. That's a win. That is a positive win. So I want to take just a quick look back and say, well, what is it that they're worried about, right? we've got, as we talked about, the mainstream media is freaking out. They're in panic. Well, there's already been some indication of what's happening here, right? There's been some indication of what are the results they're finding. And this is what I think is encouraging to me, because I believe that there was some foul play. And what we're starting to see is that the information is already coming out, right? So let me just jump to this article here on the Western Journal. So this was back from May 13, but what they're saying here is that, so this is when the Senate President, Karen Fann, she wrote a letter to the Maricopa Board of Supervisors Chairman Jack Sellers, and she said that the county has failed to comply with the subpoenas, and the audit done to date has uncovered some troubling findings. Okay, so Karen Fann, if you're not familiar with her, she did a brilliant interview with CNN, where one of the CNN reporters, that she followed her in her car and was asking her questions, and she handled it beautifully. And you can see the agenda. You can see how strongly a CNN reporter is almost foaming at the mouth, trying to catch her on something. And Karen did a fabulous job defending it. Okay. So, but this was like, what are they trying to hide? So in this letter that Karen wrote, she said that there appears to be basically these issues, these major issues that we're seeing. So one, she says, we've recently discovered that the entire database directory from the D drive of the machine has been deleted. This removes election-related details that appear to have been covered by the subpoena. She said, in addition, the main database for the election management system software is not located anywhere on the machine, even though all the EMS clients reference that the machine is the location of the database. This suggests that the main database for all election-related data for the November 2020 general election has been removed. Okay, and Trump weighed in on that, but she talks about a few other things in there. But these are serious issues, right? It's as much as Rachel Maddow wants to say, oh, it's all conspiracy theories. And well, how do you justify that? How do you say that, yeah, if the database, which is supposed to be located here, is no longer there, it's been moved, it's been deleted, it's password protected, we're not going to comply with the subpoenas. It's very obvious to me that there's something that's running afoul here. There's some sort of issue here, right? And what's really interesting with this is what they're really scared of is what is the domino effect. If you watch the Domino Joe video, right, it's what happens next, what happens in the other states and the other counties when this comes out. Everything they did, all assets were deployed in 2020 to ensure that they could have the outcome that they wanted, right? So what happens when they're not able to contain the truth from coming out? And when you have multiple states happening on different levels, when you have the truth coming out. Sandy Brown, the domino is teetering. Yes, it is like, it's going like this, and it's just about to fall. Now, what happens when it falls? I don't know, but I want it to fall. I'm ready for that. So let's go into something I want to show you here, our favorite person to watch. But let's look at what Rachel has to say about this, because I think that one thing that you see, that, and I've discussed this before, that the mainstream media does, is they project. When they know something is going to happen, they want to control the narrative ahead of time, right? And so something that she's even said before, I've showed a video of her before in a previous show touching on this topic, saying that, oh, they will find information. The conspiracy theorists out in Arizona will find problems, but we have to know that whatever they find is incorrect, right? So let's see what she says here about the evidence that they might find, but more so the concern over what's going to happen when this starts spreading statewide, right? City by city, and how she uses that to try to justify a reason to shred the Constitution and have the federal government get involved. Let's look at Mrs. Madcow, what she has to say.
Sorry, but involving the cyber ninjas here and giving them control of the actual ballots, the actual machines. means that everything they touched can never be used in an election again. We have been watching closely to the Justice Department to see if they were going to step in at all. We still don't know what's going to happen there. But elsewhere in the federal government, Homeland Security appears at least to be on it. And that may be increasingly important in the days ahead, now that what just happened in Arizona is about to start happening in other states and cities and counties across the country that have the misfortune of true believer conspiracy theorist Republicans being in control. This Arizona mess is the most high-profile one thus far, and it is a catastrophe. But they are going to try to take it nationwide. In which case, maybe we do need some federal help here to try to protect voting systems nationwide, to try to protect voting equipment nationwide, and to try to protect cast ballots nationwide from the way these Republican-controlled entities are now starting to mess with them.
So, if you listen to what he says, that the federal government, that if this starts to spread to state by state, county by county, which she's predicting, that maybe then the federal government should get involved, right? That's, again, this is why we have the Constitution, to protect against these exact things. So what you have is, how is it that we're at a time in history where these mainstream media puppets are pushing for the destruction of the Constitution and shredding of the Constitution, saying, you know what? Screw the Constitution. It hasn't worked to keep our country the greatest country on earth for hundreds of years. Let's go ahead and shred it. Let's just let Biden's administration get involved in these things. He'll be very fair. He won't be biased in what he's doing with these elections. Okay? So, but what's interesting is that you can see that there's a strong concern. He's really scared about the elections spreading to the election audits spreading to other states, different levels. And quite frankly, I think it's fantastic. I think that that's exactly what we're going to see happen. Again, once we finish up what's happening in Maricopa, towards the end of June, hopefully, and you see what comes out. And that's the thing, is that we're already seeing other states, other regions that are coming forward and saying, hey, we're going to be doing audits here, et cetera. We saw it in Georgia, New Hampshire, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. They're pushing for these things. So what happens, though? What happens when you see results come out of Arizona that question the integrity of things? I think that in and of itself will initiate a massive domino effect, because then it's almost every state in America should say, hey, wait, they've been telling us since December, since November, that there was nothing wrong. It was the most secure election in history. Well, if that evidence is coming out, maybe we should be looking at our state. We should be looking at our county. And you might see, I mean, I don't know what this, does it lead to a situation where they have to hold a new new votes? Does it lead to a situation where 45 gets put back in? I don't know. I guess what to see what transpires. But something that's very obvious, though, is that they're really, really worried, and their narrative is crumbling. It's just like the Wuhan lab thing, right? At the very beginning, Trump, the Epoch Times, a lot of these, the people that are standing up for truth said, let's look at the lab. This came out of the lab in Wuhan, right? They debunked that. It was the Wuhan Russia gate. They debunked that for so long, but now truth is truth. They can only hide it for so long before it comes out again. And that's what it is, right? They can only keep it hidden. They can only keep diverting away from it, keep distracting for so long before it comes back out again. And I think this is what's unfolding. So to me, it's very, very, very encouraging. Now, one thing I will play quickly here is, just because I feel like that we should all watch this. It's very short. is, President Trump came forth. He spoke with this was during his interview with Newsmax, with Steve Cortez on Newsmax. And I'm just going to play, it's a short video, just hearing what Trump has to say about where we're at right now. Actually, here's the video here in full screen. I apologize that my face is in the way, and my little button that makes me disappear is not working.
Done.
Yeah, broken
and the
button.
Senate votes as a whole, but the Republicans within the Senate, because there's pretty much uniformity and the Democrats don't want to see it. They don't want to have a vote count in Arizona.
Right.
What Arizona Republican senators have done and are doing now is incredible. They're doing a forensic study of the biggest county, and it's 2.1 million votes. And I think, based on preliminary letters written by Karen Fann, who's incredible, the head of the Senate, based on some of these early letters, it looks like, I'm not involved, it looks like they're finding tremendous fraud. Now, we'll see in 4 weeks. It's going to take a period of time. They had to move everything because of, it's in a convention center. It's a big operation. But we'll see in a short period of time. What they have done is incredible. They have to be admired. They're great American patriots. The Republican senators from Arizona, and now other senators, state senators and others, are looking at it because they say the same thing happened to us.
Right.
So there you go, right? From the man himself, that other people are looking at it and they're going to say, wow, could that have happened to us? Right? There's the domino effect coming in. And I'd like, just as a little side point too, I'm really happy to see Trump starting to step out more and more. If you don't go to, follow donaldjtrump.com/desk, or his, the desk of the president, Trump. That's where it's a kind of his own social media. He's been hinting at his own social media launching, coming out more, speaking more. Very exciting to me. I have him to thank for the fact that I'm even sitting here in front of you. I think that most of you probably first discovered me from the video I did, A Plot to Steal America, which, if you haven't watched it in a little while, it's a good one to go back and watch. It's still up on YouTube. So by the grace of God, I put that video up a day before they implemented all of their communism rules about what you can talk about, what we're going to delete. So if you haven't watched that, it's a good one to go back. And it still really is spot on in so many things. But I have our president to thank for that, because him sharing it is probably why you might know my face now. So my dream is to interview him one day. I think that I'll be able to. I would really like to, because he's just, he's fighting for the free world. So now I have two more kind of last final things to cover here that kind of relate to what's happening. And it's really what is the reaction of the other Republicans, right? So what we have here is an article. This is something, Epoch Times. And this is back from May 21st, but I think that this is a good one to look at, because he's talking about the weak Republicans, right? So he's talking about, okay, what are people doing? Okay, what are the ones that we voted to protect us and to stand up for us? How are they responding to this? So in this article, he said that this is Trump criticizes weak Republicans for not talking about the Arizona election audit. Okay. He said Republicans across the country should be talking about the 2020 election audit that's happening in Arizona's largest country, former President Donald Trump asserted in a new interview. He said, that's all people ask me. They say, what's going on in Arizona? They want to talk about the election. There's the F word. The weak Republicans don't want to talk about it. The weak are stupid or RINOs. I love how he talks. Call them whatever you want. And yet the Republican voter, that's what they want to hear, he told OAN in this interview. They want to hear about 2020. They want to find out, is that something that should be turned over? When they rob a jewelry store of all the diamonds and they get caught, you have to return the diamonds. They want to find out what's going on. The Republican voter wants the story. The weak Republican politician doesn't want to talk about the story because they think it's bad politically, right? So this is what he's saying here. This is it. Like if they talk about it, they get attacked by folks like Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney, and of course the entire media complex and the Democratic complex. And so again, he's calling on them saying, why aren't you talking about this? Right. And that's the thing, is it's so true. And this is something that there's a few different issues that really help me see where everyone falls. And this is one of them. What is someone's perspective on what happened in November? Right. And that's why folks like General Flynn, Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, these people that have put themselves out there, they've been branded every number of bad names because they're standing up for what they believe to be the truth. Mike Lindell, again, standing up for the truth. And speaking of Mike Lindell, here's the perfect example of what Trump is talking about. So this is an article that came out on the 26th that Mike Lindell was blocked from attending the Republican Governors Association Conference, fearful that he would confront the governors over the F word, right? So MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell was blocked from entry into the Republican Governors Association in Tennessee. Apparently, they were concerned that Lindell would confront them over their own inaction about what's happening, right? So Mike Lindell, this guy's, he's incredible. If you want to go support him, go buy some pillows. Right? I don't have any coupons. Everyone shares the Mike Lindell MyPillows coupons, but this guy is fantastic. He's really fighting for our country, right? These are the real American patriots. So look, even Lindell himself being blocked from a Republican conference because they don't want him to discuss the F word because they're so scared of it. It just shows that where's your spine, right? When George Washington was calling forth, people to go fight against tyranny, to pick up a pitchfork, to grab a rifle, a musket, to go fight. Like, gosh, can you imagine these Republicans back then, these leaders? I can see Mitt Romney cuddled up in the back of his little cottage with his, stealing his children's teddy bear to protect him because he's too scared to go fight. Or I'd see him, sneaking off and trying to, feed information to the British to, turn his country, turn against his country. It's like, what happened to that? Well, the thing is that what you see is that the people that aren't going to stand up are the ones that are getting pushed out. And this is the time when the people that really care about this country, that really want to protect our freedom, protect our elections, they're standing up, right? They're standing up. And again, it's the spirit of 1776 is returning. But with its return, it's like shining a light onto something, right? What's dark will disappear. What's dark is going to be scurrying away. It's like the cockroaches when a light comes on. And I want to be one of the ones that's staying right in the middle of the light, right? That's the thing. I want to be one of the ones that's standing right there that's saying, hey, like, give me a flashlight too. Let me help with this, right? Because this is where we are in history. This is where we're at. And it's important. So, Anthony, funny comment. I won't read it out loud about Mitt cowering in the corner and doing something while the British take his wife away. Exactly. So we're now at the end of the show. I knew I would be going close to an hour today. I've been waiting to cover this topic. I'm not done going into this. I'm curious to see how censored this video becomes, whether YouTube keeps it up. I feel like I've walked a pretty straight line with what I've talked about on this episode. I think I've followed their guidelines, but I'm a political prisoner to them. So you never know what they're going to do. They're not going to treat me fairly. But I just want to thank everyone. Actually, I want to thank you watching right now. Thank you very, very much for coming on this show. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to what I have to say, to help me share this information. I really do appreciate that because we're all in this together. Our country is going through, I believe, its greatest tribulation since the founding of our country, and it certainly is shaking everything up. It's causing a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, But by that same token, I think it's these difficult times where you see, the true good characters are forged, and you see people stepping up. You see a lot of people, I think, that took our country for granted, that took our freedom for granted, that are now looking at it and saying, "Gosh, what did I do to contribute to this? How did I allow this to happen in my country? Did I get too caught up in the bread and circuses? Did I get too focused on watching the Sunday game, or too focused on, playing golf to see what was happening at my child's school board, or to get involved in local politics?" I think that's a question that a lot of us are asking. Like, what happened to, where's God, right? Where has God gone in our country? And so these are they're soul. It's a soul stirring time, which I think is a good thing, because it's a time when all of us can really look inside of ourselves and see, where are we at this time. So this weekend, I'm going to be in Dallas, Texas, for a God and Country conference. I'm very, very excited. I hope to do some interviews there, which I'm going to be trying to publish and get out to you. I'd like to be able to interview General Flynn is going to be there, Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, a lot of other folks are going to be there. So if you're in the Texas area, if you're in Dallas, just search for God and Country. Search it on DuckDuckGo. Otherwise, you get Google's interpretation of it, showing all the terrible fake news stories about it. You can find, I forget the actual website for it. But if you want to go, I'll be there. You might be able to meet me there. I'd love to meet some of you in person if you live there. I know a lot of you folks are from Texas. It's also good if it's God and country, right? You can have God without country, but you can't have a country without God. And that's the thing. That's where we're standing right now, right? Is our country. I believe that our country is returning to God. And in that process, the people that are rejecting God are revealing themselves, and they're being cast out, right? Because if you look at the Constitution, if you look at a lot of the early writings of the founding fathers and the early people in our country, you see how important God and faith were to them. And that was the foundation of our country. And that's what the Marxists and the communists and now the radicalized left have tried so hard to get rid of, because that's where the strength for our country comes from, is those principles. So just a quick reminder to, if you haven't yet, hit that like button, share the video with a friend. I'm on, as you know, I'm on every Tuesday and Thursday at noon. I'm here, kind of sharing my thoughts with you, trying to help make sense of this crazy world, trying to give us all a little bit of hope and some positivity, because there's a lot of things to be really happy about. There's a lot of things to be really hopeful about that are happening. And I think that there's good reason for us all to have hope. I think fundamentally it's, God is in control. And I think that there's a reason that we're going through all this. And I think sometimes it can be a great thing. I know I've had various difficulties in my life. And after I got through those things, I look back and said, gosh, that terrible event was one of the best things that happened to me, because it taught me who I am. It taught me a lot about my faith. It really helped forge my character. So, all right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the beautiful weather wherever you're at. I know in Ohio, it's kind of beautiful summer weather that's here. And I will see you all on Tuesday at noon, hopefully with some good reports to have for you and some good stories to tell about my weekend in Dallas, Texas. All right. And if you, one last thing, if you want to follow me on social media, I recommend Telegram and SafeChat. Those links are in the description of the video. I'd love to interact with you. I'm most active on Telegram. That's where I share my thoughts mostly. So, all right, everyone. Thank you. God bless. Have a wonderful weekend.